All right, ready to dive in today. We're going deep on food grading. You know, those grades on our food.
Yeah, like grade A or those kinds of things.
Exactly. We've got a career guide about becoming a food grader, plus some info on this cool tool, RoleCatcher, that's supposed to help people land jobs, maybe even as a food grader.
Interesting. I've always wondered what goes into those grades.
Me too. I
Yeah.
always just kind of glanced at those labels without much thought, but there's a whole process. Like, did you know it's not just about how the food looks?
Really? I thought it was all about appearances.
Nope. This guide mentions sensory criteria. What exactly is that all about?
Wow, that's fascinating. Sensory criteria are really the heart of food grading. It's all about taste, the smell, how it feels in your mouth,
Right.
the texture. It's like a whole checklist they use to make sure the food, actually lives up to the grade.
Wow, so like a tomato and a steak would have totally different checklists.
Exactly. Each food has its own unique set of criteria. It's pretty cool.
That makes total sense. So these food graders, they're like what? Culinary detectives using their senses to solve the case of, is this a good apple?
That's a great way to put it. They use their senses to uncover the hidden language of quality. Like, imagine someone assessing a mango, right? They're not just looking at the color.
They're probably smelling it, right? Making sure it has that sweet mango scent.
Exactly. They're pressing it gently, smelling deeply, maybe even giving it a little.
Little sniff.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like an art how they use their senses.
That's incredible. But what about technology? Is there any high-tech stuff involved?
Oh, absolutely. It's not just about eyeballing produce anymore. They've got gadgets now, like infrared spectroscopy.
Infrared, what? That sounds intense.
I know, right? But it's actually really cool. They basically shine this infrared light onto the food, and by how the light bounces back, they can tell things like how much sugar is in it, if it's ripe, even if there are problems you can't see.
Whoa, that's like super high-tech. So it's a mix of human senses and e-technology.
You got it. It's the best of both worlds. And it's changing all the time.
Speaking of changing, I read about them using x-rays now, too. X-rays for food.
Yep. Don't worry, it's perfectly safe. They use them to find things like, oh, maybe a bone fragment in fish or meat, or to check inside fruits and veggies without cutting them open. It's about safety and quality.
That's super smart. Way faster than cutting open every single avocado to check, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Technology is making things so much faster, but without sacrificing those quality standards.
It's amazing how much we take for granted with those food labels. It's a whole hidden world.
For real.
Yeah.
Speaking of hidden worlds, where do you picture all this food grading magic happening?
Honestly.
Yeah.
I always imagine like a big warehouse, bright lights, tons of fruits and veggies everywhere. Am I close?
You're not far off. Food graders work in all kinds of places, though. Sometimes it is those giant warehouses, other times it's those busy processing plants. Or even special labs, where they get super scientific with analyzing food samples.
So it really depends on what type of food they're grading.
Right. You got it. It's a diverse field, that's for sure. Like, you could be checking out coffee beans one day.
And then, like, inspecting a fancy steak the next.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There are so many specialties within the field, too. You've got your coffee tasters, tea experts, those malt masters who make sure beer tastes amazing. It's amazing.
This is really changing how I see those grocery store labels.
Yeah?
It's not just a sticker. There's a whole team of people behind it.
Right, and those teams play such an important role. They're the ones making sure that grade A label actually means something, like that we're getting a good avocado or tasty piece of meat. It's all about keeping those food standards high.
Totally. So we've got this combo of human senses and tech, right?
Yeah.
But this career guide makes it seem like our senses are still super important.
They are, and it's kind of surprising why.
All right, you got me curious. What's so special about our senses that machines just can't copy yet?
It comes down to those little things, nuances, like imagine picking out a watermelon. You can knock on it, look at it, but...
But you got to smell it to know if it's good.
Exactly. And that's something a machine just can't do the same way. It might know how much sugar is in there, but it doesn't get that feeling that this is a good watermelon feeling that our noses give us.
Wow, never thought about it like that. Our senses are connected to, like, our memories of a good watermelon.
Right. It's linked to our emotions, what we like, all those little things. Technology hasn't quite figured out how to copy.
So even with all the cool tech, a good nose still knows best.
Pretty much. And it's not just smell either. Think about taste. A machine can tell you how sweet or sour something is.
But it can't tell you if the coffee has those subtle flavors.
Exactly. That's where human taste buds come in. They're not just tasting, they're experiencing the flavors and deciding, like, does this chocolate have the right amount of bitterness? That kind of thing.
This is blowing my mind. So much goes into judging if a piece of fruit is good.
It's a wild world, right? And speaking of this world, this career guide makes food grading seem like a real career path, not just a temporary job.
Right. Like, there's room to grow and specialize.
Totally. It's not just a stepping stone. You can really build a career here. And the need for skilled food graders isn't going away anytime soon.
So for anyone out there who loves food, pays attention to detail, and maybe even has a little adventurous spirit, this could be a good fit.
Absolutely. And the best part is, the skills you learn as a food grader, those can be used in tons of other jobs too. You learn about quality control, how to use your senses, even managing how food gets from the farm to your plate. Those are useful skills.
Yeah.
But finding a job in a specialized area like this, it can be tough.
No kidding. Finding any job feels impossible these days, but food grading, that's got to be next level.
Yeah, it's definitely competitive. Remember how the field is supposed to grow like 5% or something?
Right. So that's a lot of people fighting for just a few jobs.
Exactly.
So how do you even stand out? Especially when you're up against people who can probably smell a ripe tomato from a mile away.
Well, that's where this RoleCatcher thing comes in. It's built for this kind of stuff, helping you break into those tricky fields, like food grading.
Okay, tell me more about this RoleCatcher. It's supposed to be like this amazing resource.
Yeah, it's like this all-in-one platform that makes job hunting way less of a headache.
How so?
Well, it helps you look for jobs, on all those different websites. It helps you make your resume really good. It even helps you get ready for interviews, which can be super nerve-wracking.
No kidding. Okay, but let's say I really want to be a coffee taster. Like, that's my dream job.
Yeah.
What's RoleCatcher going to do for me specifically?
Okay, so it's got this AI thing, right?
Okay.
And it can really dig into those job descriptions. You know how some jobs have a whole novel describing what you need to know?
Yeah.
It figures out exactly what the employers are looking for, what skills you got to have.
So instead of just sending out the same resume to a million places, it helps you, tailor it for each job.
Exactly. It's like it unlocks the code of job applications. Plus, it's awesome for practicing interviews. Imagine that coffee taster job is all about, knowing different kinds of beans, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't know the difference.
Right. So RoleCatcher could help you learn about those beans, so you're totally prepared if they ask you about them in the interview.
That's actually really smart. So it finds the jobs, A&D helps you get ready for them.
Yep. It even listens to you practice answering interview questions and tells you how to improve.
Wow, but that takes away so much of the stress. And in a field like this, where even a tiny advantage matters.
It could be what gets you the job, for sure.
Totally. But even with all this AI and stuff, it seems like being a food grader, it's got to take intuition, right? You can't just learn it all from a computer.
Oh, absolutely. Technology helps a ton, but it's really those human senses that make a food grader great. Being able to taste those tiny differences or tell if the smell is just right.
Like having a sixth sense for food.
Exactly. And that comes from doing it for years, training your senses to really understand the food.
Wow. This has really changed how I think about the food I buy.
I'm glad to hear it. It's easy to forget all that goes into it.
Right. It's like we're getting this peek behind the curtain, seeing all the work and the skill that goes into making sure our food is good.
Totally. And as technology changes, it's going to be really interesting to see how food grading changes too.
Yeah, like will those human senses always be so important?
Right. Or will machines get good enough to do it all someday?
That's a good question. Something to think about as I enjoy my perfectly graded snacks.
Exactly. And hey, maybe this got someone listening interested in a whole new career path.
You never know. Okay, we've talked a lot about food grading today, from how it works to the technology they use, even how to get a job doing it. What are some key takeaways you hope our listeners are walking away with today?
Well, the big one is I hope they look at those food labels a little differently now.
Right. It's not just a sticker. It's way more complicated than that.
Exactly. There's a whole team behind each label using their skills and technology to guarantee the quality.
And the safety of our food. Don't forget about that part.
Of course. And I also hope this made everyone a little more curious about their food in general.
Like where it comes from and how it ends up on our plates.
Yeah. Who are the people making sure your coffee tastes amazing? Or your cheese has that perfect sharpness? It's a whole world behind the scenes.
Yeah, it really makes you think.
It does. And the more we know about our food, the better choices we can make at the grocery store.
Totally. Well, this has been super interesting. Anything else you want to leave our listeners with today about food grading or anything else we've talked about?
How about this? Next time you're at the store, really look at those food labels. Think about everything behind them.
All those people working hard to make sure we get good food.
Exactly. It's more than just a sticker. It's about quality, and knowing what good food is supposed to be like.
I love that. Well said. This has been an amazing deep dive. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing all this awesome knowledge.
Of course, this was a lot of fun.
And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this food grading adventure. We'll catch you next time.